We are live on the Ourlads Football Network, Proline TV, for a Wednesday evening, talking more NFL offseason football. We're into the AFC South for the first time, so we have our work cut out for us, starting with the Jacksonville Jags. We might as well start at the top. The Jags, winners of the South, and our guest, we had him on for the very first time just before the season began, Travis Holmes, who is the beat reporter at BigCatCountry.com and also is the co-host of the Duval Dive podcast, The Lucky Charm, Travis Holmes. How's it going, Travis?
It is going good. I like the Lucky Charm moniker. That works well. It just happens to be that I come on in the off season and all of a sudden the Jaguars have what is it? It's 4 games to 13 wins. So yeah, a 9-game turnaround.
That's right.
All right.
That's it. Your very first, our opportunity here to interview you for the very first time. Of course, the team had been struggling for the past couple of years. Yeah. And you come on, preview the season. You talked about how confident you were that the team was going to have a much better season than most people had projected, and they certainly did. It was really an incredible year. Of course, they had the long winning streak at the end of the regular season. Unfortunately, they couldn't keep it going in the postseason, but baby steps. Doesn't happen overnight. You can't win a Super Bowl right away in your first season. Even New England found that out in the Super Bowl. So anyway, Travis, thanks for doing this. And there's a lot to talk about because there's, I'm sure there's fans out there wondering if it is at all possible for Jacksonville to bring back both star players on offense and defense, especially with the cap being what it is. So let's start with that. The cap is 30th in the NFL. We know they'll figure a way to manipulate it and get to a point where they'll be able to spend some cash. And there's going to be a raise, of course, in the cap as well. So I guess the question is, this is the big one. Do they have enough money, even with the tag or not? Not sure whether or not they want to go down that road, but do they have enough to keep both Etienne and Lloyd?
Yes, they have enough. There are 2 different conversations to be had about whether or not they should pay an off-ball linebacker, what you expect Devin Lloyd to probably garner on the market when you're talking about the numbers being thrown around in that $15 million to $20 million range. And the $20 million I'm hearing a lot more often. That's the guys from Spot Track were on the flagship station 1010XL just not 2 weeks ago, giving out that exact same number. And that's a very difficult number to, that's a difficult price tag for many teams, but it's a more difficult price tag when you're talking about someone who's sort of right up against it, like the Jacksonville Jaguars. And the same thing would then apply for Travis Etienne to a lesser extent. Obviously, you're talking $14 million for the general price tag for the franchise tag, around that number. That's probably just a non-starter conversation for that range anyways. And then if you're maybe you can get him for that $9 to $10 million range in-house if he's willing to take a discount or something along those lines. But then you just drafted Bashaw Tootin last season. You just drafted LaQuint Allen as one of your best pass blocking and pass receiving running backs. Are you a franchise that's going to start off paying a guy when you also just drafted 2 guys and you're probably realistically going to draft another running back this season? That is a very difficult conversation to be had, but that's just NFL offseason. That's the business of football. James Gladstone is, just an FYI, he is going to draft a running back this year. I'd be willing to bet my house on it.
Whereabout, do you think?
Well, that's the hard part.
The 11 picks so far, which means they might have more. And there are multiple picks in round 3, 5, 6, and 7. So round 3, multiple picks. And of course, you can move up with maybe those multiple thirds to get the player that the Jags want, because they won't be picking until when? Really deep in round 2, correct?
Yep, pick 56. I mean, at this time,
56
and
right now. Okay.
56 right now, and I say right now, and everyone in my circle always laughs every time we have draft conversations, and I immediately go to their pick. They don't have a first round pick. Right now,
Sure.
because James Gladstone had 10 trades last season. 10 trades in his opening season while he's starting off as the general manager late in the offseason. We're talking February, middle of February, getting hired right before the combine starts. And the guy has 10 trades, 7 in-season trades, 3 trades in the draft. Okay, this is a guy who's probably going to move around. We just don't know where. And it seems like he's just itching to look for that deal, if that makes sense.
No, it does, especially with that many picks. No team normally holds on to those, and without a first pick or a pick in the first 55, you would think that there will be some maneuvering because the team is getting closer and closer after, like you said, he picks up a team that was struggling, and now he's got a team 1 year later that is on the cusp. So it's awfully tempting to not want to kick the ball down the road.
So to answer your other question, or the tag on question, as far as approximately where you think that they would look into getting a running back, that's where it becomes more difficult, because I look back just earlier today, actually, at just running backs that were drafted with James Gladstone in-house, like when he was the director of scouting for the Rams.
Okay.
Obviously, this isn't his. These aren't necessarily have to be labeled as quote unquote Gladstone's guys. Obviously, Les Snead's the one in charge in LA,
sure.
but Gladstone's on staff. He's helping them with the strategy. He's helping find the players. And they drafted a running back literally every year since 2021. And even after Gladstone left, they drafted a running back this past season. So in my head, I'm like, all right, so no, he's going to draft a running back. And
Okay.
you got guys from Jake Funk. Well, all right, that's a 7th round pick in Gladstone's first year, to a 5th round pick in Kyron Williams in 2022, Zach Evans and 6th rounder in 2023, Blake Corum 3rd round 2024. And then you got this past season for the Jaguars, Bayshaw Tootin and LaQuint Allen's 4th and 7th rounders. All right, well, the Jaguars have 3/3. I'm looking right at that right there.
Sure.
All right, I think that's a prime opportunity to get a guy, fingers crossed,
Absolutely.
like a Jonah Coleman.
You think you think that, let's say Etienne is no longer there, someone like Coleman, someone a little bit more physical, can break tackles. That's what you think they'd be looking for to complement.
It's the style. It's the style. It's just something that they don't like. Tootin can run through guys, and he's very good at that. But his vision is still maturing as far as that's concerned. And that was something that he struggled with early in college. I didn't think he had necessarily had the greatest coaching in college. Just you could see that on the film. So in my head, I'm like, all right, they need a guy who can big body, who can fall forward, who can still be a potential 3-down back option. And for me, that feels like a Jonah Coleman type pick. It just gives him a more versatile, a more well-rounded running back room.
Sure.
Versus Travis Etienne, who was a great back in on his own right. But again, that he was a different back as far as style was concerned. He generally wasn't the type of guy that would necessarily fall forward, and he wasn't a bigger or bulkier guy who's going to give you those 2 to guaranteed 4 yards, even when the blocking fails. That just wasn't his strength.
Yeah, just taking a look right now at our most recent top 10 list, and this is going to fluctuate, of course, over the next several weeks, the combine and all that. Love will go early, top 10, and then you take a look at the rest. They're all 2nd, 3rd rounders, 4th rounders. So no one knows at this point, between Katron Allen, maybe even all the way down to Nicholas Singleton, where these guys are going to go. So out of this specific group, you think a player like Coleman, does that also include like a Jadarian Price or a Katron Allen?
Well, and that's a fun part for me, is because it's mainly me just trying to figure out guys stylistically who I think are versatile or different in that way, because I can find an argument in my own head that says, you know what, I think the Jaguars could use this type of guy, or I think the Jaguars can use that type of guy. And like, it really just depends on what they want it to look like, because that's the piece that I just won't know, is I don't know. Do they want a big body guy like that? Like, they got rid of Tank Bigsby, but they also got rid of Tank Bigsby because he was more limited. It's just as far as the pass blocking, as far as the as far as the pass blocking, as far as the receiving is concerned. So you could make the argument on both sides of that. And I'm in my head, I'm like, well, is that the fact that they wanted to get rid of him because they just didn't feel like they needed that style based on the offensive line that they had and everything else? Or was it just more of a, hey, he's not going to have the reps just based on the fact that we have a luxury. We have an assortment of guys in this running back room, and let's get something for him while we can. It's just a very difficult way to split that apple and trying to figure out exactly how they feel about guys versus how they feel about styles, if that makes sense.
And again, it's early, and we'll have scouting reports over at Ourlads for the draft guide for all of these running backs. So don't forget, link in the description of this video where you can order the 2026 Ourlads draft guide, and don't miss out. So as Jaguar fans out there watching this way, as soon as well, actually, even beforehand, you'll be able to take a look at the scouting reports of all these running backs and determine for yourself which running back you think or running backs you think are better fits. Okay, so
just as for my personal taste, I like Claiborne, but I'm well aware that he is very similar in style to Travis Etienne.
Yeah, you can't have two of those guys. Well, and he's also a little on the smaller side, which you would think you'd want a bigger guy to complement.
I mean, both Claiborne, and you had, what is it? Jamal Haynes also was another guy like I had on my list, and I'm just like, for a smaller back, he breaks a lot of tackles, and he's a matchup problem in the passing game. But he's like Etienne early on, where it was more effort and as far as his pass blocking is concerned, more effort and technique, and that's why I thought he was very similar in a lot of ways to Claiborne. And I'm just like, okay. And so if they want just a guy who's going to replace Travis Etienne and you want to have a style that's like that, then that makes sense. But otherwise, you have a clean board to kind of find what you wanted to find versus trying to replace what you had. And I don't know how they feel about that piece.
Yeah, and again, I think any of those backs after Love, from Allen to Singleton, it could be the second running back. It's just all going to depend on every team, what they're looking for. They're all within the same range talent-wise. So I think it's going to be something that is going to go right down to the wire. It's going to be a nice prediction, actually, to see who is the second running back drafted in 2026. So, all right, then okay, so a question regarding what's kind of, since we're still on the draft picks and stuff. So they don't have the first, of course, because of the Travis Hunter deal. It's real interesting because you would think after making that deal and Hunter getting hurt, that big issue for the Jags, and yet they go on a long winning streak to end the season, go to the playoffs. It's almost like they didn't miss him. And it wasn't like Hunter got off to a great start anyway. He's a rookie. He's got every rookie is going to have, their ups and downs. And now we're hearing that once again, even though he got hurt, they're going to play him both ways and all this. And we talked about it. Look, I'm so against this. And just the fact that they got hurt, and I'm sure they're probably saying to themselves, oh, but that had nothing to do with it. Oh, go fuck yourself. Just don't kill the kid, will you? I mean, don't let your ego get in the way either. Just let the kid excel at one position and, play him once or twice, on the other side. That's my take. What is the take of the Jaguars fans?
I mean, the Jaguars fans, so they're split on the issue, just to be honest about that. And I think the Jaguar fans even were split on the issue when they drafted him. It just depends on it depends on your risk tolerance at the end of the day. That's what it comes down to. James Gladstone has pretty clearly shown himself to be all in on, I'm going to be bold, on the bold life. Like he says it in the press conferences, and then you see the action and you're like, oh, he was not playing about that. He was kind of serious. I'm going to push the envelope, and at worst case scenario, I then believe that I'm going to have a very, very, very good cornerback or a very, very, very good wide receiver. Like that feels like that's my shoot for the clouds, and shoot for the stars and land on the clouds, or whatever the phrase is, kind of situation is. My fallback option is, I guess I only have a really good cornerback or really good wide receiver, but we're going to try this throughout the duration of this rookie contract, this two-way thing, and kind of just see where it lands. And I'm not necessarily against that personally.
You mean to find out where he best fits?
Well, it's less about in my head. It's less about where he best fits, because the fit was always going to be best at cornerback, just because it's easier. I mean, I'm a former wide receiver in high school. I played cornerback in college. It's simply easier to play cornerback. It just is.
But you don't make as much money.
You don't make as much money. So from the player perspective, that's a very big thing, especially talking about that from this recent crop of college football, players where they get NIL money and everything else. So if you're mentored by Deion Sanders, this is going to be a conversation heading into the NFL that you want to be a wide receiver. So from that perspective, I get why Travis Hunter would want to be paid, accordingly as a wide receiver when you're talking about those contracts, down the line. But for the moment, I think the draft pick was made with the thought process of, by the end of this rookie contract, we want it to look like what it looked like at Colorado. By the end of this rookie contract, learning this difficult Sean McVay system, which is hard to get, lined up and everything else, which we saw on film earlier in the season, and he got acclimated by that week 7 game with this, coming out game. It was difficult for him to learn the different spots, the different roles and things of that nature. But also, by the end of all of it, you've seen the flashes at receiver. You've seen the flashes at cornerback in the Cincinnati game. You can objectively say, yeah, he really can do it. Now, show me the consistency. Show me he can be injury free throughout doing it. And by the end of year 3 towards year 4, will he be able to truly do this? That was always going to be the aim. That was always going to be the goal. We'll still see. It's too early to tell, but I don't think folks should be necessarily making the grand proclamations that we're currently hearing in the socials just because it's NFL dead zone time.
Yeah, I'm gonna be surprised by year 3 if they haven't picked a spot. That's just my guess. I don't see it happening. And because you said consistency and repetition is so important, and you can't get to consistency and repetition with one position if you're doing 2. So I just think his consistency and repetition and all of that would speed up if he could just concentrate on. But it's his pick. It's his team. And I'm not going to argue with it. They've had a very successful first season.
So hear me out. I view Travis Hunter as the glue guy of all glue guys. I viewed him that way from the start. He's the mirror that he's the poster that they're putting up when they're signing free agents. We want you guys to be like this guy. Not necessarily that you have to be this guy, but that's the aim, if that makes sense. That's the North Star. Okay. I want you to love football like this guy loves football. I want you to perform in the way, or practice and learn and whatever. Want to know ball in the way that this guy wants to just engulf this and ingest this 24/7. Like, I feel like that's the aim. That's the goal. So in saying that, if Travis Hunter ends up being, already in my head, he's probably already just going to be in the conversation for comeback player of the year. Let's just start there. Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, but just from the perspective of, if he's a really dang good corner, let's just give it top 20 cornerback. Okay. And I think that's a very low bar for where I think he could end up landing. But top 20 cornerback, and he gives you, 4 touchdowns, 5 touchdowns as a wide receiver, 3, 4 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, 500 yards, something like that, and a handful of snaps. That is a very successful season, and I think most people are probably reasonably ecstatic about that. Don't you?
Absolutely. I don't think it's going to happen. That's why I agree with you 100%. If he can do that in his second year, that's a home run.
Okay, so that's the ceiling.
Yeah, okay. In the second year, correct. Because expecting anything much more than that would be a little, even Ohtani needed some time to develop, and it took him a while. So it's not going to happen overnight. And he's got to come off the injury as well. I'm sure he'll be okay, but that's another thing to monitor and so forth. Because really, I was taking a look at the injury situation for the team. There didn't seem to be a lot of guys that missed time last year, significant time. Would that be the case?
Well, it was one of the weirdest injury seasons that you can probably say, because they didn't lose a lot of big ticket guys. They didn't lose quarterback Trevor Lawrence or anything along those lines. Travis Etienne was reasonably healthy throughout the season. You lost Brian Thomas Jr. for a little bit, and he was dealing with his wrist injury basically from the start of training camp. Was where you start hearing people talking about it, whether or not it was on the injury report. It was kind of that weird dynamic of how
that's really the reason that Thomas, that's the culprit, because it was like night and day his rookie season to the last year, and that's what you attribute that to.
I don't have a thing that I attribute it to, just to be honest with you. And I say that on it just to be real, because I didn't think his injury had much to do with some of the things that I still saw occasionally on the film.
Okay.
And I want to be honest about that. Now, whether or not I'm seeing hustling issues earlier in the season, whether or not I'm seeing frustration when the wrong route is ran, whether or not I'm seeing a guy that's stopping on routes in the middle, on in-breaking routes during games in the early portions of the season, that does not scream this is a wrist issue. That screams I'm confused about what I'm supposed to be doing in this complex offense, and I just don't know where these are option routes, and maybe I'm seeing the field this way and my quarterback seeing the field this way.
Okay.
And it's very helpful for me to now have a Jacoby Myers or someone else that comes in. So now that puts me back at the X role, that out wide receiver, where it's more vertical routes, less, farther away from the line of scrimmage, more time for me to read the ball in flight, less drops based on that. And that's kind of how I thought the season kind of progressed and ended up. Was as his routes got farther away from the line of scrimmage, the easier it got, and the more it seemed that Brian Thomas Jr. was back. So that was my read of the situation, less of the injury situation. It's not to say the injury wasn't real.
Okay.
It's just to say I don't necessarily pin all of it at the feet of just the wrist issue, if that makes sense.
Well, no, it does. And you mentioned too that the new offense, and it's a lot for young players. They all don't seamlessly make the transition from one offense to another. So that could be thrown in there as well. I'm not saying, hey, he's got an excuse, but you do have to, an injury, a new offense. You said veteran comes in, starts to play better. So at least that's a hopeful sign for this upcoming season, which is definitely going to be a big one for him after a disappointing year 2. So let's go over now the free agent situation with the team, because it's not like there's a lot. It's really just quality over quantity. And starting on the offensive side, of course, we already talked about Travis. Well, let me give, for the fans out there, let's give them a percentage. So we've got both coming back, Lloyd and Etienne. Only one coming back or neither coming back. How do you break up those percentages? What's the most likely scenario?
Both coming back feels like 5%.
So pretty much no chance.
It feels like it.
Okay.
I'm just going to be honest about that.
Okay.
If you're talking one coming back, I think that's doable. Maybe
How
even
much?
closer to that 45 to 50%. Like,
so just 50% that one comes back.
I can see that happening, and that's where I'm split on this. Because for me, it comes down to two different things. And that's why I can't land on a good number on this. Is Travis Etienne at the cost that you're really reasonably talking, at that $8 to $9 million range? If you get a team friendly deal, I could see that happening. And I can also see a situation where this running back market gets so depressed that the Etienne wants to return, if that makes sense. And that's the part that most people in Jacksonville just kind of haven't talked much about from my perspective. And I listen to everyone talking about everything Jacksonville related. And no different than last offseason, where Rico Dowell ends up getting a contract for less than $3 million a year, because the market kind of just gets depressed eventually after the first few guys. I'm just kind of curious about what's going to happen in this market if you have reasonably 8-9 guys in split work backfields. Is there a potential that some of these guys who think they're going to get $9 million to $10 million in the season are actually going to wrap this thing up at $5 million? I think that could be interesting if that were to take place. So because of that, I'm like, there is a non-zero chance that Travis Etienne could come back making less than that $9-10 million range that you're talking about. just depending on what happens with the rest of that market and how other teams kind of see it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at overall. I think you have a couple different tiers. Look, I don't think Brees Hall
Hmm.
is going anywhere. So,
Hmm.
as a Jet fan, he's just not. So, the Kenneth Walker, that's going to be interesting.
Hmm.
And then you also have Algier, and I think you might even be able to put Algier with Dowdle at that next
Yeah.
level, that next tier. But there's only a top tier, and it's Etienne, Hall, and Walker. So you have
Yeah.
three guys at the top. And like I said, Hall will not be available. So that makes two.
Mm.
So it's not a lot. That means that the teams out there with big money that say, you know what, I'm willing to start spending money on running backs now. It's in vogue again. Back-to-back years, Super Bowl champions, big-time running backs. I got to
Hmm.
get one. And let's say Walker also decides, oh, I'm coming back to Seattle. Which to tell you the
That
truth,
changes.
I don't think
Yeah,
he's going
that
to.
changes
That's
it.
my guess.
Yeah.
Because I just think that look, he's got a Super Bowl win, maybe he'll take less. He'll have to take less to stay in Seattle. And maybe
Yeah.
he's happy with splitting. But if he's sick of splitting and he wants to be the man, he's gone. So the question then
True.
is that leaves Travis Etienne potentially. That's not a lot. I think there's going to be a lot of teams out there, a handful of teams out there that will find a way to pay Travis what he wants.
Right. And I could see a world on both sides of that line. And it's not so dissimilar to the Devin Lloyd situation where, again, you're seeing the range being thrown around, having an $8 to $9 million bottom and top. That changes the math significantly because there is a price where everyone has a price. And it's not just saying that, hey, I'm not interested in this Travis Etienne guy returning, or I'm not interested in this Devin Lloyd guy returning. Am I interested at the cost that they're asking for right now? And like, it's not a locker room issue or anything like that. Like, these guys are beloved in the locker room. It's just simply coming down to price. And that's kind of what it feels like. So if you can get a Devin Lloyd you're talking the floor of that range, then, well, this is an easy conversation. But at the ceiling, I just don't think it's something that will be a good physical move. So from that perspective, yeah, I think that there's a reasonable chance with all of these moving pieces that, all right, yeah, I think one of these guys back, I could see that happening. I would even put it as a coin flip of happening. And that's probably looking more at Travis Etienne than looking at Devin Lloyd just because of the cost.
Yeah, I mean, it looks pretty obvious to me. I haven't done an actual list, but it looks pretty obvious to me that he's at the top of the list at the linebacker position.
Yeah.
So
the
age, the season, and you've got top of the list running back, top three, top of the list number one linebacker. That's the problem, is that these guys are at the top of the lists, basically, at both positions. And even though, like you said, they're not like the positions that should garner a lot of money. So that's the trick. And it only takes one general manager, of course. But considering Lloyd is at the top of the list, you would think that someone out there is going to want to pay him whatever they want or whatever he wants.
So, and this is where it comes to style, because I try my best not to get myself in the Jacksonville, the Duval bubble of groupthink and trying to view these guys as the best, basically because they wear teal on Sundays. So I try my best to be like, all right, how are other fans looking at this, or how are other media people looking at this, or how are other circles in the NFL looking at this, to kind of come to even keel on where they truly are. So if we're talking about the Travis Etienne situation, you're then looking at his entire career. You're not just looking at this past season. You're looking at how do running backs generally look in a Liam Cohen offense. All right, you're looking at the same thing with Devin Lloyd even. All right, how do linebackers normally play in a Jeff Hafley offense or defense, or and you're trying to figure out how much of this is scheme, how much of this is this guy finally just showing us what we thought we were going to see in their first few years in the NFL. Is this something that is going to be able to be duplicated, or is this something where I'm going to be regretting it? Is it a style thing? Just from that perspective, Devin Lloyd was incredible. it's shutting down the middle of the field, but also didn't really get a lot of tackles. And even when you do on a game by game basis, that was the argument against him for the Pro Bowl. That was the biggest piece when those Pro Bowl and All Pro conversations started coming up, was other guys had nearly 40% increase on tackles, because that's just not Devin Lloyd's game. It was more about the passing game. There are dynamics of this that make it just real interesting, because he's absolutely one of the top guys in the NFL, and it's a passing league. So someone's going to probably pay. I'm with you there.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm talking about, like, there's a lot of DCs who's going to be like, that's just not my style. And I can see that also.
Yeah. Well, and you are looking at a select number of teams, though, that would be willing to pay the big money. So again, that's also shrinks, because I mean, who knows? I mean, I'm not gonna say it's not possible, but one of the teams that could probably use him and has the money is a team like the Bengals. But would a team like the Bengals actually put up that kind of money? So it does kind of even then, even though you see on the cap a lot of these teams have money, or 10 teams maybe have the type of money to spend, that cuts in half potentially, just for whatever variety of reasons. So it's not that many. But what is your percentage then that both do not make it? Is it less than 50% then? It's more than 50%.
Well, so because I already said the other one was 45 and 5, then I'm already at 50%.
Got to be 55 and 60.
Yeah, so I think that's the highest percentage of happening, is that neither of these guys return, and that the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to play the comp pick game very similar to what the Rams would do. They not want them to leave, but you want them to play good enough so that when they do leave, then I'm going to get a 2027 maybe third round comp pick, fourth round comp pick, and I'm not going to be very active in free agency, and then we can kind of just continue refreshing the roster in that way. I can see that.
That's a strategy. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. There's only 3 other offensive guys that are free agents. Any of these guys priorities? Because Dyami Brown was a big disappointment. Tim Patrick is a veteran, and Quentin Morris. I mean, is he important to bring back? Because he's not going to really garner much money. So what's the deal?
Right. Yeah, Quentin Morris is one that I have a personal affinity to. Apparently, I'm alone on that edge, I guess.
Okay, why is that?
I like the way that he performed in his spot duty when when Brenton Strange went down and they wanted to run more 2 tight end sets. And it was an up and down season from my perspective for Johnny Munt and Hunter Long, but then I already knew Quentin Morris was a reasonably solid blocker from his time in Buffalo. And then I'm like, all right. Then I see him playing in those 2 tight end sets, and they're effectively running the ball. He's effectively moving guys. And then the PFF scores come out on Monday and it says he's bad. But in my head, I'm looking at the tape and no, it looks good to me. I don't get it. I don't get the dynamic. I don't get the dichotomy.
I trust you more. You trust yourself when you're watching your own team than you should Pro Football Focus. That's for sure.
So from that perspective, and you're talking for that cost, I believe its market value was, what? I won't even give a number just because I'm probably going to be wrong after all the free agent numbers I've been looking at, but I know it was a very small amount. Yeah, at that point, I'm absolutely drafting that guy. I'm absolutely keeping him in house, and if I can just draft the guy, he's not a guy who's going to play so dominant that he's going to stop you from bringing another guy in if that's what you're looking for. But he's also a good enough guy that he keeps that ceiling right. He keeps that floor raised while you continue trying to draft your way into a much higher ceiling, if that makes sense. So I'm here for that.
Okay. Do you think they'll bring back either Patrick or Brown?
I probably wouldn't. And
neither one.
Dyami Brown. I think, Dyami Brown, that money effectively in my head went to Jacoby Myers.
Okay.
When that happened and he became more healthy scratches religiously. And the same thing with Tim Patrick. It's not that I actually think they could bring back Tim Patrick and I think it'd be just fine. It's just more of one of those, the cost of bringing back Tim Patrick, let's say it's $3 million a year or $4 million a year or something like that. I think it might be a little bit more than that, but let's just go with that. That's still a late 2nd round, early 3rd round wide receiver in the NFL draft they be making.
League minimum, that's it.
At
this stage of his career.
At that point, you may as well just draft the guy in the 5th round and go.
You got 11 picks, exactly. Okay, defensively, would would Monteric Brown be the next priority?
Absolutely. It feels very, very much like that has to be the case, but it's very similar to that Travis Etienne conversation of will they?
Well, if they
And for
don't
that
bring
cost,
back
and for that
Lloyd
cost,
or Etienne, does that make it a lot easier, or are we still not sure about someone like Brown because you think he's going to get a good contract?
I think he's going to get a good contract when I'm looking at the rest of the cornerback market, when I'm looking at the ages of those guys,
Okay.
and the fact that more of these defensive coordinators these days seem to be like seem to be pushing towards running more zone because these are the teams that's leading the NFL in turnovers, are for the most part playing more zone defenses. It just the combination of all those factors and looking at the rest of that market just makes me believe that Monteric Brown is going to be way more valued by the league, which could end up resulting in inflating his value also. So, I mean, again, you might be talking about Monteric Brown like truly getting $14 to $15 million.
Wow.
And that's not being paid. Like, I mean, I think his floor was even like right around 9 to 10 million. When spoke to the Spot Track guys 2 weeks ago. Like, so at this point, if his floor is 10 million and you just think, hey, I don't even know that I necessarily want to play as much zone defense as I played last year, because I'm going to be honest with you. I love Monteric Brown. Everyone knows I'm a cornerback, former cornerback. I love DB play. And I've always talked about Monteric Brown before he blew up this past season as just being this guy. He's great at press coverage. He's great at the line of scrimmage. He's a good tackler. He's a guy you kind of always want to root for. And I'm saying all that and still saying I don't believe he returns to Jacksonville simply because he still limits you. And when he limits the amount of time you're able to play press man coverage. And that was one of the big things that bit Jacksonville in the butt, even against Buffalo. They just couldn't get up in their guys' spaces because they couldn't run with them from the line of scrimmage, if that made sense.
So they need more speed in the backfield?
You need a little bit more speed in the backfield and guys who just give you the ability to play press man coverage maybe 20 to 30% of the time versus 15% of the time. That's the difference.
Okay. As far as the rest of the secondary, Newsome, you can let Newsome go, right?
So he can be brought back, but he gives you a little bit more flexibility, at least. Again, he's kind of like a floor raiser. Right? Like I viewed him with the same understanding, at least, as that Quentin Morris situation. Obviously not the same. He's going to make a lot more money. Cornerbacks just make more money. But he's the guy who I could absolutely see choosing to come back to Jacksonville on a prove-it deal, because he was only in town for just half the season after the Tyson Campbell trade. He knows the defense. They understand each other, if that makes sense. So that's the one that I'm like, if they were to sign one of these two guys between Monteric and Greg Newsome, I could see it being Greg Newsome simply because they can then still draft the guy. It's not stopping you from doing that, and you're allowing him to compete. I think that'd be a fine situation. Just depends on price.
Okay, and what about Wingard? Did his play tail off a little bit last year?
It wasn't even about his play tailing off necessarily, because I think he was a guy who, I mean, this staff truly believes in competition, right? You could see it in training camp. You can see it on the film. Like, they don't actually like just talk it. They truly believe it. If you're going to get the spot, you're going to get the spot because you deserved it, not because your contract says you should have had it. And Andrew Wingard early on earned that spot, but he also earned that spot with the asterisk that it was kind of penciled for Caleb Bransall. Caleb Bransall gets hurt in training camp. He doesn't play the entire season. He's going to be back. All right. You saw the insane ascension of Antonio Johnson out of nowhere. That also happened. So that also happens. And then all of a sudden you're like, I don't really need Dewey Wingard, like, unless it's for special team purposes, but we have Ray Lane for that. He was a special teams ace also. At that point, at that point,
no,
you're just
bring
like,
him on if you can get him on the cheap.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily know that you will, especially with the amount of draft picks that they have and the fact that they already flipped over this roster last year. 55% of the roster that started training camp was not on the roster for the previous training camp. So, like, that's how much of the depth. That's the piece that people don't talk about, is the depth pieces were all different, even if the starters weren't all different. So you have to believe that they're going to do the same thing and refresh more of that depth and more as the guys kind of cycle out, like a Dewey Winger, who's a veteran. They're just going to keep cycling out those guys with cheap talent.
So did Antonio Johnson, is this like something where they feel, wow, breakout, we love it, he's one of our key guys now for sure? Is that what we're dealing with, or is there still a little trepidation? Well, let's see him do it again.
When you say for sure, that's the piece that that's where I maybe.
Yeah.
It feels like it's true. It feels like it's real. It feels like it's true.
Okay.
But I like to see it, maybe a little bit more of it for like 5 games. That'd be great. Or
do
at least
they
give me
think do they think he's definitely penciled in starter right away? No doubt.
So from the people that I've spoken with, feels more like he's going to be the guy as far as safety is concerned. Antonio Johnson is going to be the guy, and you're going to have Caleb Bransall having to basically earn that other spot on the other side away from Eric Murray. And that's kind of what you're going to be looking at. Like, because at the end of the day, when I said earlier about competition, you still have to earn it. Yeah, they're going to have the runway for you to earn the role, but they're going to have real competition, and it doesn't stop just because they changed over the roster in year 1. That still continues because that's how you raise the ceiling.
Okay. All right. And then moving on over to the up front, we, of course, started off with Lloyd. We still have a few more guys up front. Ogba, Gardeck, Smoot, all in their 30s. None of them really difference makers at this stage of their careers. Any of them need to come back?
I mean, I kind of feel like I would personally not be against Gardeck returning, especially for that cost. But he did give them a little bit of midseason juice as a pass rusher. And he did fall off a little bit more towards the end of the season, but I thought he did a very good job. And it just depends on how you feel about Jalen McLeod also. He spent the entirety of the year on injured reserve. They tried to bring him back towards the end of the year before the opening the 21-day window, before they just reclosed it and at the postseason time. So he never truly returned after his ankle injury. But I think they'd love him to be that next Dennis Gardeck. So if they feel like he's there, then great. You don't necessarily have to bring Dennis Gardeck back. But for the sake of, I mean, I don't know where he currently is right now as far as his injury return and conditioning and everything else. Yeah, I wouldn't be against bringing Dennis Gardeck back and having Jalen McLeod be the guy right behind him.
And what role would that suit?
Well, so Jalen McLeod, Dennis Gardeck, they're basically your Sam linebacker pass rusher. And they kind of use them in those, like, I guess I don't know what to call them, like those pass rushing packages, NASCAR packages.
Okay,
I forget the phrase, but yeah. So that's kind of what they're there for. Like, I mean, and Jalen McLeod, again, Dennis Gardeck gave them some pass rushing juice throughout, the middle portions of the season. Like after the bye week, Jalen McLeod coming out had like a 19% pressure rate in college. Like that was something that he was good at, being a stacked linebacker off ball, but also giving you some juice in the pass rush game. So that's why it felt very obvious that was his role, and that's exactly where they had him on the depth chart.
And on the defensive line, Ogba, Smoot, you think those guys will be back?
If they're back, and I don't think they'll be back. I mean, I don't think they'll be re-signed early on, but if they're back, that just feels like guys who will just be signed after the draft if they're not able to land the right guys, their targets there. Yeah,
it's I'm sure, and it's a good draft for edge rushers. So with the picks that they have, they should be able to grab some younger players. What about up front? What about Austin Johnson? He didn't seem like he had that great of a year. Is he just like one of those vets, just like you just mentioned, another one of those guys?
Okay. Exactly. I mean, I consider Smoot, I consider Austin, I consider Austin Johnson, I consider Ogba all in that same kind of category of if they don't have to be back. It's just kind of one of those things that they're brought on. It's a buy low situation where you just have an opening and you weren't able to land the targets that you were looking for in the draft.
Okay, so one of the things when I was going over the contracts, one of the things that I noticed, and I've been doing this now, I think we're halfway through with our interview process for the offseason. I've gone through every team's contract situation, And one of the things that I noticed with Jacksonville is that they probably the one team that has the worst situation when it comes to dead money versus cap savings.
Mhm.
And matter of fact, I think I only looked at like one guy that you could go and say, okay, I guess we could save a couple of million by letting Chuma Edoga go. And that's about it. That's all I could come up with. So is this a fallout from the previous regime and the contracts they were given and just keep pushing it down the road with bonuses and things of that nature? Is that partly why they have a new general manager last year? Was this a talked about problem? Because there's nothing really.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you could eat up all the dead money you want to let guys go. Anything's possible, but that's money out the owner's pocket. And I'm sure he's not happy about that.
Yeah. The overall Jaguars situation, the cap situation is tight, and that's clearly due to former GM Trent Baalke. When you consider the Jaguars didn't even go crazy this past offseason in free agency. But in terms of the dead cap with minimal savings, what you're talking about, like it's hard to save. It's hard to save when you've already saved, quote unquote, saved. And what I mean by that is at a time where they structured like low cap hits on many of Trent Baalke's contracts, like that was their early window. And it just didn't feel like they were saving because they were just really bad at picking the right guys in free agency. So like they effectively just like flushed those funds down the toilet. I mean, in very many ways. Like this past offseason with Gladstone taking over, I mean, I already mentioned the fact that they turned over much of the roster. It was 54, nearly 55% of the roster kind of turned over. So we're taking all the roster depth, the glue guys, and even probably about half of the offensive starters, and they're all turned over. And he's forced to kind of get out of a number of those contracts. That's what you were just mentioning. And that just weren't going to work either, whether it was for scheme purposes or injuries, like, Christian Kirk, or just bad decisions to extend guys like Walker Little. Like that was a late season, when you knew the season was over, extension that was made when you pretty much probably knew at this point that Doug Peterson wasn't going to be back in that. Trent Baalke shouldn't have been there, and that was still allowed to happen. And now we are where we are with Walker Little. Okay. Like it's a weird situation. You cut Gabe Davis, Christian Kirk, Tyson Campbell traded, Evan Ingram, Ronald Darby cut, Walker Little not working out. Like all of these contracts are guys that they signed with void years tacked on to the final years of the contract, and much of the first 2 or 3 years effectively guaranteed in structure. So they had the really low cap hits early on, and they just kicked the can down the road. And we knew it then. Honestly, I have multiple articles on Big Cat Country talking about like when guys were restructured or extended or whatever else. Back in 2023, it was Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, and Brandon Scherf. They extended and they restructured. And then they again redid Scherf's contract, the next year.
Yeah.
Right. They were going a little crazy with Shad Khan's money, and that's not like shade thrown towards Shad Khan. It's just kind of you trust your general manager to make the right decisions, and they just had the wrong general manager at the time, unfortunately. Like that's the key.
So is there a player or two that they're going to look at and go where Gladstone is going to have to talk to Khan and say, hey, it wasn't my fault, but I think you're going to have to pay this dead money. This is not going to work out here. Is there a player or two that we could still see that happen?
Yeah, they've done it so many times at this point. Like, again, I mean, we just went down the list of guys who either they cut and had so much dead money.
Okay.
I mean, that Tyson Campbell trade was still on the books this year for, I believe it's like $16 or $19 million or something along those lines.
Okay.
You got the Christian Kirk situation. They had a lot of debt money left over on that one. Gabe Davis this past season had a lot of debt money that was from that. You're looking at the Walker Little situation. I feel like you're going to be able to trade him just because he is a left tackle and he's not like bottom of, like he's probably an average to maybe even barely below average left tackle option for that cost, because it wasn't a bad contract as far as the amount is concerned.
So you think they're going to trade Walker Little?
There. I think that's an easy one.
Okay.
Personally.
And anyone else?
Anyone else?
Anyone they could cut, eat the dead cap, or is everything just they're just gonna
I
have
mean,
to?
you got the potential of extending Trevon Walker, which is for me likely going to happen. Honestly,
Well, I'm
like
looking at cuts. Anybody they
yeah,
can
so
cut, get rid of,
specifically cuts.
or
You
trades. But like you
could,
said,
yeah, like you could look at a guy like well, even then that's not a cut. I don't know that is true. I don't know. I don't see
so
anyone else
nobody's
that's
on
just
this team that's
staring at me.
making way too much money and is just
Chuma, I mean, yeah, Chuma Adoga,
yeah.
that's
Well,
like
like I
it.
said, that's $3 million.
Yeah,
So
that's like it. Like,
he's
there's no
easy.
one else
Okay.
because they've already done it. Again, we're
Okay.
saying
Fair
more than
enough.
half of the roster that has been cut
Okay.
or traded or rolled over. Then that's what we're looking at.
Not a problem. That's what I wanted. That's an answer. That's good. Like you said, look, this is what happens. That's why Gladstone's done a really good job, and you just got to give him even another year or two to fix these contracts. That's a good sign that they're headed in the right direction.
And in 2025, they restructured Foye, Oluwakan, Devin Lloyd, and they even restructured Walker Little in October. All those guys were just recently restructured because they were just trying to survive. Basically, I need more cap space to put together a roster. So what you're looking at right now is the end result, but some of these guys were already restructured in season just to make it back to near zero.
Yeah, and it's still going to take another year or two to get right. Okay. Let's talk. Are there any developing players on either side of the ball, young players, not the draft picks, but young players that can end up with a lot more playing time this upcoming season?
All right, so young players who can get more playing time this season. Like obviously, we're not like the Jaguars had so many injuries in their 2025 draft class that becomes a very easy conversation. Obviously, Caleb Bransall, he was already penciled in as their starting safety.
A draft pick,
that's an easy one because he just didn't play.
Yeah.
But then you're looking at guys like Wyatt Milam, who could reasonably, and I don't mean that as a small thing. I do mean it like I hear that they believe he can truly be the starter for Patrick McCarry in that role at right guard. So then, all right, that's an option. I don't know that John Monheim is going to be able to do enough to take that Robert Hainsey role, but I do know that this coaching staff is serious enough about competition that they're going to give him a chance.
Okay.
As far as this offseason, as far as this camp is concerned.
Any players who were not draft picks?
So any players that are not draft picks
from
but
last
still
year's
able
class.
to be developed.
Just from last year's class.
That's I don't know. But most of the guys are kind of just like, I mean, you may be talking about someone like a Ventrell Miller playing more middle linebacker if you lose Devin Lloyd. Like that seems to be an easy transition there. We've seen a little bit of him play at least in this past season. And he was a co-starter.
Would they feel good if Lloyd goes with Ventrell Miller as a starter, or would they have to bring in a definite veteran or a draft pick?
I would view Ventrell Miller as the penciled in starter while you're still drafting another rookie that's coming and tell them that if you're going to be the starter, you're going to have to take the role.
Okay. Let's see. Anyone else? You didn't mention Yazir Abdullah. So is that a bad thing for Yazir?
It's not that it's necessarily a bad thing. I just don't have a gauge of it, honestly. It's just hard for me to kind of feel like what is he, because I haven't seen him play under this new regime very much. And I do know way more about Jalen McLeod just as far as that's concerned. So for me, I'm just trying to figure out where his fit truly is.
That's okay. But he's still like a part of the team. He's still going to get it. But he hasn't wowed you. He's obviously going to go on his third year. So he hasn't done anything yet that says that he can be a breakout type player.
And that's my concern. That's really what it comes down to.
Let's see. How about some of these guys that like Danny Strigo? I know PJ Green was a rookie last year. Strigo. Any of those guys that really opened your eyes to more playing time next year?
They absolutely both opened my eyes in playing time this season, and that with another year of development, another year in an NFL offseason program, are going to be able to be those quote unquote veteran guys who do things the right way. Like I can absolutely see those guys gaining more snaps in the rotational role. I just don't know that with what's going to probably be brought back in this offseason. Like, I know that they're going to invest in the interior defensive line. I have zero question on that. So then they're probably going to bring in another edge. So then do guys who gave you some juice in 2025 even get 5% of snaps in 2026? I don't know that.
But neither of them like wowed you, or you said, "Oh, I like that guy."
Oh, no. BJ Green and Danny Strigo both wowed me very much in 2025. I just don't have a peg on what that's going to result in 2026. I love them both. BJ Green had multiple big time like sacks, like the Justin Herbert sack. That wasn't a sack, we'll call it, because they called it unnecessary roughness and took away the man's first career sack. Like, that was BJ Green. Danny Strigo gave them much, of juice in the pass rush department. For a 5-game, I believe it was, sample size towards the middle end of the season. Okay. So I like both of those guys. To be very clear, it's just because I foreshadow or foresee that the rest of this defensive line is going to get some investments in this offseason that I don't know that they're necessarily going to make that cut unless they can show it in the offseason.
Mason Smith, has he shown anything?
I don't know that Mason Smith is going to necessarily be on the roster in 2026.
That'd be a no. Okay.
That's unfortunately.
How's special teams?
Incredible, honestly. You got Parker Washington, who's like one of the league leaders in punt return. You got Cam Little, NFL record holder, getting all pro votes and all of, that's the guy. Logan Cook has been a top punter for years now. And Ross Matzik is a 3-time Pro Bowler in consecutive years, I believe. So special teams is great. I got no real comments on special teams at all. Bayshaw Tune even was near the top of the league in kick return at one point before missing a little bit of time with his hand.
All right. Now let's wrap it up with the top needs for the offseason. Is there a position on this team that the fan base collectively agrees is without a doubt the number one need? Or is it a collection of 2 or 3 different positions?
There's one without a doubt. That's not a question. Okay. Is the top need for the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that's interior defensive tackle.
Okay.
They need a pass rush threat from the interior of the defensive line. Devon Hamilton is great. He is one of the primary reasons that they are the number one team in stopping the run or limiting the run on defense. But he gives you little to nothing in the pass rush department. And Eric Armstead started off the season great at pass rush, but you could argue that either Father Time is catching up with him, or you could argue that his hand injury and the recovery after that caused him to kind of fall off as far as pressures and sacks towards the end of the season. I'm not sure which one to kind of peg that on or to lay that on, but nevertheless, they got little to nothing pressure in the passing game from their interior defensive line, and that's the area. So, I mean, if you grabbed 1 or 2 defensive tackles between free agency and the draft, some people might tell you that's not enough. Like, that needs to be a strength, and it needs to be rectified pretty immediately.
Yeah, let's see. Did you? Are there any veterans that you've already looked at that?
Oh. I mean, John Franklin Myers John Franklin Myers is the one that everyone and their mom loves. John Franklin Myers.
Now, I should warn you, I spoke with my Denver analyst a couple of days ago, and I asked him about that. And I asked him, Denver, what's up? Are they going to bring Myers back and so forth? He goes, they never even thought about bringing him back by early in the season. It was not even going to be something that was on their mind. And he just really didn't paint a very good picture. So you just have to be a little, because I'm going to be now a little bit hesitant, and I'm going to look a little bit further into John Franklin Myers. And because, you never know, every player ages differently. I know he's only 30. He should have a couple good years left in him. But hey, maybe he just needs a change of scenery or a different role, because I know he's a multiple role player. But you're right. I think a lot of people have definitely brought his name up.
Well, it was a weird thing because the Broncos also seemed to be very resistant to moving him last year, because from everyone that I talked to, they had multiple teams reach out to them specifically to try to see about getting him on their trading at the trade deadline, and they were saying no. So then there's that question, and then you also hear the rumors that Jacksonville was also one of those teams that reached out to Denver about John Franklin Myers.
Okay,
again,
that's
when
good.
he was on the when potentially on the block. So then Denver chooses not to, and then at the end of the season, now you're hearing that there was no real conversation about bringing him back, and you're wondering where that rub is in between the trade deadline and the end of the season. That all of a sudden,
also probably a different story between knowing that you're not going to be able to re-sign him as opposed to not liking him. It might have just been, look, hey, we're trying to win a Super Bowl. I'm not giving him up.
Yeah.
And, but we're just not resigning him because I know he's going to want a big contract. He's 30 years old. He's going to ask for too much money. We're not going to give it to him. So, but we're also trying to win a Super Bowl. So no, unless you give us a deal that we can't say no to. So that's probably how I would look at it. That's why I'm saying I'm not trying to rip John Franklin Myers. Just saying that maybe just myself included, I want to do a little bit more homework to figure out whether or not, would he be worth it, depending on how much he's looking for. So
I get it. Yeah. So he'll turn 30 in this upcoming season. I think he's 20, like he was born in September. So he's 29 at this point. So he's, if there's a few guys that are here that you could still bring in another guy who kind of raises that floor, it gives you at least a little bit of juice as far as the pass rush is concerned. But for the most part, that's the first guy I'm looking at is John Franklin Myers.
I can see why.
Yeah,
I went through the list and I didn't see a lot of eye-popping players. That's for sure.
So that's basically the reason, or otherwise, you're going in the draft saying, "All right, I need to get one of these guys early on." That's kind of where you are.
Okay, so defensive tackle, you need some, not just a defensive tackle, but you want someone that can. They're going to need a pass rusher, someone that can get to the passer from the inside. That's defensive tackle. Number two need
outside cornerback. I mean, obviously, if you think that there is even a reasonable chance that you're going to lose Monteric Brown, that you potentially could even lose Greg Newsome, then you're looking at, all right, who's going to be my other outside cornerback? Because are you going to put Jarian Jones there? Are you going to put Jordan Lewis there? We've seen that. It's not necessarily the greatest. It's something you can probably skate by with.
Yeah,
you could skate by with it, but you don't love it.
No.
How
did Jones do?
Jones, he's really dang good. Both Jarian and Jordan are really good in the slot. They just are so good near the line of scrimmage and blitzing and kind of maneuvering inside of the numbers. But when you get them on the edges is when it gets a little bit squirrely.
So Jones is basically going to eventually just take over for Lewis in the next year or two.
That's exactly where my mind goes. He's the mentee. I mean, and they talk about it very much that, the mentor in that relationship is Jordan Lewis, captain, one of the defensive captains. And the mentee is Jarian Jones. Like that's that big brother relationship that they have. So that makes total sense that will be the eventual progression of that.
Okay. Next, need number three.
All right. Need number three. So we got the interior defensive line. It stinks that we're not
I gotta ask this question.
The offense at all, but
I gotta ask a question about Cole Van Lanen. So, and the offensive line in general, they obviously had a good year. So, did he surprise you the most?
Indeed. It was to a point where we did film breakdowns on the Duval Dive podcast like every week, where I'm like, I said week one, I thought he was getting to move around a little bit in the run game, but he was just very dominant in the pass. And as time just kept going on, I just kept trying to find, chips in the armor. I kept trying to find issues within his game or to explain it away. And eventually got to the point where I'm like, you know what? I can't. I have nothing. They put him on an island way more often than they were putting Walker Little on an island. They weren't giving him as much help, and he still was just holding stout there. So he absolutely surprised me after seeing him just be a rotational guy in previous years. So then in this scheme, he got the job done and got it done well.
Yeah, and to get someone to play left tackle, and to get a guy like that who had not, you had the guy, but to see him transform. Boy, every team wished they had one of those guys. on their team.
Every team didn't have a previous coaching staff that also seemed to truly struggle.
There you go.
Just objectively, they struggle in developing guys.
That's it.
And now you have a new staff that comes in and they are developing all these guys at the same time. Whether it's Devin Lloyd, ETN, Nicole Van Lennon, Trevor Lawrence is looking like a new man. Like there's a list of guys who are just playing differently, and they weren't under the previous regime.
So really, is there a need at all in the top 5 on the offensive line?
I don't know that there's necessarily a need on O-line. Like from my perspective, I'm still drafting an interior O-lineman. I wouldn't even mind if they drafted one as the first pick. If you don't like, I don't know, like if you feel like Wyatt Monum's going to be that guy, great. I still think they need to get bigger.
Another offensive lineman, interior offensive
lineman. I love Ezra Cleveland. I wouldn't be shocked if they extended him entering this contract year this season. But that doesn't change the fact that they got to get bigger, because they, at this current moment in time, they're primarily running mostly zone, and the North Star is that LA Rams offensive line where you can run more gap man because you're just bigger and you can just move guys. Well, how do you do that? You bring in guys like Chuma Edoga, who's pretty big. You bring in guys like a Fred Johnson, who's another big guy. Even though those moves didn't work out, you can see the aim, if that makes sense. So if that's a theory of mine, but if that's truly where you're looking to go, then I just see they're going to continue investing in that O-line until they get bigger as time moves on. And that may be moving off of a guy like Patrick McCarry, who's around 300, 305, to getting those bigger 220 maulers, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we see it at San Francisco, of course, and they've done it to success. Yeah. Kyle Shanahan's done it amazingly. But okay, so would that be considered need number 3 or just a top 5 need?
So I think all the needs are defense. If you're talking the primary needs, I just think that's
all
on
defense. Okay. What else? Then? What would be so after defensive tackle and corner?
We got linebacker.
We're
looking at this, the main losses. I mean, do you truly believe in Ventrell Miller, who did start the season as a co-starter with Devin Lloyd? Was that really that close early in the season and Devin Lloyd just showed up? Or do you truly believe that Ventrell can be that guy? If you believe that, then you got Jack Kaiser backing him up, and that may not be as much of a need. But if you don't, then getting a guy, I don't know, like Jacob Rodriguez out of Texas Tech. That sounds like an easy guy you can pencil in with that similar athleticism to Devin Lloyd. Maybe not asking him to do the same things, but definitely coaching him up to be that similar guy in the middle of the field, kind of shutting things down. I can see that from that perspective. And then at that point, you're just trying to give Anthony Campanelli all the tools that he can have. So he's not trying to coach around these guys, but he can actually run the scheme he wants to run.
And then would the next one be edge?
I mean, yeah. I mean, they have options because BJ Green and Danny Strigo can both, rotate there. But overall, you probably want another guy. So if you're saying top 5,
would it be edge over safety?
I don't think safety is as much of a need. I mean, they got 3 guys at this point in my head.
So the only thing that's left is edge, running back, and wide receiver or tight end.
Running back. And that's just because I haven't seen enough vision from Bayshaw Tootin to truly say that he should be the guy versus being a guy. And yeah, so that's one I'm not shocked, especially how often you can get running backs in the middle rounds. If they were to draft a guy like that in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, that's easy. I mean, I think I mentioned Jonah Coleman early on, so that was just talking about that one versus the running back conversation we had. Yeah, so
and they're completely happy right now. They've got a really good top 3 receiver room. And
that's insane.
Do they need and of course I guess they would consider Hunter. That would be their 4th guy,
right?
So it's really nothing. This is just not a priority at all. They'll just get.
I wouldn't say that's a priority at all.
One receiver to just wrap up the 5.
If you can get one guy who can take the top off of a defense, maybe a 1 speed guy in the late rounds, I think you'd be fine, and it gives you a secondary option in case anything doesn't improve with Brian Thomas Jr. or something like that.
Okay. All right. There you go. That is going to wrap it up for our offseason preview for Jacksonville. Still a long way to go. We haven't even hit the combine yet. You have the Duval Dive podcast. How often do you do that, Travis?
Oh, I mean, we're doing a podcast like every other day.
Every other day.
So yeah, so that's even in the off season, we were still at 3 times a week. Like maybe we may go down to 2 times a week eventually, but no, we are here to talk about whatever the Duval fan base is talking about. So it's a great time.
And we got links in the description of this video for both the podcast and the content at Big Cat Country. And I'm sure you're going to be on top of all of that. So, Travis, I really appreciate your time. I look forward to getting the opportunity to talk to you later in the offseason, especially after the draft, when we can find out what Jacksonville was up to, especially with their top 2, Lloyd and Etienne, which right now you believe neither will be back. That is your guess. So
I do.
Travis, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, man. Take care. All right. That is Travis D. Holmes, Big Cat Country. And you can check him out 3 days a week on the podcast. We are going to be back tomorrow talking more football. We've got the AFC North with the Pittsburgh Steelers at 4:00 with Alex Kozora. That is with Steelers Depot. And then Adam Patrick is going to join us later in the evening at 7:00 Eastern to talk Minnesota Vikings. So more football offseason previews, Pittsburgh and Minnesota tomorrow. You can also check us out at 1:00 with the Playbook ATS podcast. Mark Lawrence, Jim Feist, Andy Isco, myself. We're going to talk some college basketball. We're going to talk some futures in the NFL. And I think that'll wrap it up with the exception of our college basketball show on Friday. So a lot of college basketball talk here on Proline TV. And don't forget all of our football talk with our brothers at Ourlads, the Ourlads Football Network. So for Travis D. Holmes, I am Greg DePalma. Thank you very much. And just answering Grandizer's last question here. No, I will not be doing an HBCU Legacy Ball preview. Since I do NASCAR, golf, and college basketball, and what else do I do? Horse racing. I don't think I have the time, Grandizer. So anyway, thanks as always for participating in the comment section, and let us know what's on your mind. Subscribe, obviously, if you'd like to check out more of these videos all off season long for football and everything else we do here at Proline TV. We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.